You are chasing a feeling, not a person. Have you ever sat there thinking about somebody that you used to share a relationship with, somebody that you used to care about, so much so that you feel a tightness in your chest when you start to think about them? Like you miss them so badly that it begins to get hard to even breathe. You're starting to replay the memories, you're starting to replay the laughs, the late night conversations between you two. And it feels like a part of you is still stuck in that moment. The truth that most people won't tell you is that you're not chasing them. You're chasing the way that they made you feel. It's not that you really want them back as a person. It's the feeling you felt around that person. What you were in those moments, how you felt seen, how you felt heard, how you felt appreciated. You felt alive. That feeling of being wanted was what kept you trapped in that moment. That is what you get addicted to. And feelings, obviously, they're intoxicating, man. Like, they convince us that the past was so much better than it really was. They start to distort the memory. They lie to you. Because you genuinely forget the way things were, and you forget the arguments, you forget the anxiety, you forget the texts that were never answered, You forget the way that you had to shrink yourself just to make things work. And the feeling that you were chasing, it blinds you to all these things. It makes you feel like nothing was ever wrong. It makes you feel like you miss all of that. The feeling is that one glimpse of warmth in your chest. It's the thing that you keep reaching for. The feeling is simply nostalgia in disguise. And this feeling applies to more than simply people and more than simply relationships. People themselves chase highs. They chase the feeling of success, the adrenaline which comes from a risky decision paying off, the warmth of praise, the warmth of being loved, the validation from someone else. We're not addicted to achievement. Instead, we're addicted to the emotional spike that comes with the achievement. You're not hooked on that person. You're simply hooked on the version of you that existed beside them. Think about that for a minute. Sometimes when you're not even mourning a relationship, you're mourning who you were when you had them. And then once they leave you, that version of yourself leaves with them. So you grieve, not simply the person. You don't grieve just for the person, not just for the relationship either. You grieve for your own sense of identity, the sense of identity that you've lost. And that is what makes detachment such a difficult thing for people to overcome. But where it shifts, right? I'll show you where it shifts. If the feeling is what you're after, why limit it to a single person? Why limit it to a single moment, to a single chapter? If you can feel that way one time, you can feel that way again. You can feel that way forever in the future. It won't come from obsessing over the past. Instead, it will come from building a new present for yourself, where you set yourself up to achieve that feeling. To talk about illusion for a second, a lot of people miss the idea that, the thing that doesn't even exist anymore. You're missing what isn't real. You're chasing a version of someone that's so long gone, or maybe they never even existed to begin with. Maybe you fabricated it all in your head. You fell in love with the potential of what could have been instead of what was actually in front of you. The highlight reel of that person is what you obsessed over. The idea of you and them together, the idea of them as a person as a whole. And that itself is dangerous. Illusion is very dangerous because when you begin to romanticize the past, you compare it to a painfully raw and, outright unjust present. It's not a fair fight for you to compare then and what you believe is true to what is actually your reality. The past is so edited and so polished and so filtered that it's compared to your present, which is completely unfiltered. It's so much better that you really just want to live in that past compared to what you're currently living in. The present is, it's volatile, it's vulnerable, it's so incomplete compared to what the past is that you feel worse. Of course you're going to feel worse. Memory is a selective thing. And it's a cruel thing as well. Memory is so cruel to you because it shows you what could have been, even though it never happened. It shows you those memories that you fabricated in your mind. It shows you the better version of what actually happened. It hides the sharp edges and it keeps the soft ones, which is the main reason why you keep reaching back out for something that never really fit you in the first place. I'm going to get real now. This is where it's actually going to get real. A lot of people waste their life, plenty of years of their life waiting to feel a certain way once again, without realizing that the power to feel that way was never in someone else's hands. It was always in your hands. A lot of people, they don't realize how much of their life they're wasting chasing after these fabricated realities, when in reality, in the true reality, you are the one who controls that fate. You are the one who can allow yourself to feel that feeling again. And it's not like it's some sort of motivational quote that you'll slap on your fucking wall or, put on your wallpaper on your phone. It's genuine neuroscience. It's genuinely got to do with the plasticity of your brain and the way your brain works. Your brain has emotional recalls. It has dopamine loops. It creates a chemical and... I messed it up. Sorry. Your brain creates a chemical and releases that chemical around these people, around these things, around these places, around these moments, which is why you associate them with a positive feeling, which is why you associate them with a high, That's why withdrawal from an addiction feels like a genuine withdrawal. That's why it all feels horrible to do. But the same brain that created that high can create it again. It can remake it. It can remake it through new experiences, new habits, new environments around you. You don't need them for your brain to release that dopamine. You don't need them for your brain to release that chemical. Instead, you need to get back to you and understand what it is that makes you feel that way. The grounded, the more present version of yourself who's more engaged and who's not constantly checking their phone or waiting for their text response, that person is the one who's going to, encapsulate that feeling far better than the one who's chasing those fabricated realities. Because if you don't shrink to be chosen, or if you don't read into fake silence, then you're not going to be living your life in a rearview mirror. Instead, you're going to be looking towards the present. You're not going to be focusing on the past because you've got so much ahead of you. To put it in a kind of a simpler way, I guess, chasing a feeling is kind of like chasing a shadow. You'll never end up catching it. No matter how hard you try, you'll never be able to catch it. Because the second that you reach that shadow, the shadow moves. And the more you chase the shadow, the more lost you get trying to chase it. But once you actually stop chasing that shadow, once you sit with yourself and you sit with your feelings, simply sit, something strange genuinely begins to happen. You realize that you notice other feelings in your body. You notice other parts of you that have always been buried under the chase of that feeling. Parts of you that have been buried under the curiosity and, the calmness. You start realizing that you can be more confident within yourself. You start realizing that these feelings were always there and you just never knew how to hear them because you were too busy chasing some fake feeling. We live in such a world which, it trains us to outsource our emotional stability. It trains us to outsource it to other people instead. It trains us to outsource it to substances or to screens or to rely on distractions to avoid the discomfort of being alone with yourself. But the twist is that growth happens in that discomfort. Self-respect grows in that silence. And that peace, that real, grounded, unshakable peace doesn't come from the outside. It blooms from within you. And that is where you learn it. You sit down with yourself and you learn your own emotions so that you can control that bloom. You can allow yourself to become happy when you need to, not around a fake feeling. So to break the cycle, you have to understand that if you're stuck chasing a feeling from the past, you have to ask yourself, what part of you are you really trying to get back to? What part of your own existence are you looking for in that person? Because maybe you gave too much to them. Maybe you overextended towards them. Maybe you confused your validation with love. Maybe you lost your boundaries trying to keep someone who was already halfway out the door. Maybe you don't realize that that isn't weakness. That is humanity. That will happen. But all you have to understand is that you do not have to stay there. every single time that you resist the urge to chase what's gone, you begin to strengthen the muscle within your mind. You begin to strengthen the muscle of self-trust. Every single time you choose your current presence and your current present moment over some fantasy, over some fake bullshit, you reclaim that power. And over time, you begin to stop craving the feeling that used to control you so endearingly. Because you begin to realize that you create the feeling. You are the source. Not them, not it, not the past. Simply you. There's a beautiful quote by Rumi. It says, "Don't grieve. Anything you lose comes around in another form." That also includes feelings. That also includes the warmth and the joy and the light. You'll feel it again at some point, but not by forcing it into your life. Not by begging life to give back to you what you already took away. You'll feel it by letting go of what was and embracing what is. And what is right now is possibility, is potential, is, it's an aim for the future. So allow me to end with something I'd like to tell you. You are not broken simply because you miss someone. You are not weak because you feel drawn to the past. You are human. That is a human trait to have. But do not allow nostalgia to become your prison. Do not allow some memory to steal your future. Because don't forget, you are not chasing a person. You're simply chasing a feeling. And the good news is that you are the one holding the key.